Hello children, I welcome you back to this portal of e-learning. And today we are going to do a little research that is pertaining to the chapter Journey to the End of Earth. And why this research is very important for you all. In this presentation, I have tried and included lot of points that would help you out to answer the most crucial question of this chapter that was also in this year's board paper. Why Antarctica is a place to go if you wish to study the past, the present, and the future of the planet Earth. This chapter it has been included last year itself, and that is why it is very important from the point of view of board examination. We'll begin with the presentation. To that, I have given the header, Evoking the Thought. That's an extrapolator. Just to help you out to write your answers well. Pertains to the chapter Journey to the End of Earth. Before we begin with the presentation, there are these three pictures. I would like you all to give a close reading to it and to understand by reading between the lines. Though it's a comic way, the animated way of saying it, it's actually inferred to intend to say what is the present scenario around. Wherein you see in the first picture two water creatures, they are talking about certain thing. When the first one says, I have got something stuck in my teeth, can you see what it is? When the second one replied, looks like a video camera. You must have eaten one of those seals that had a camera mounted on its head. The second picture, wherein two penguins, they are standing on a split ice. One reading a newspaper that says Antarctica ice melting increased by 280% in last 16 years. And the other one, the thought cloud, let's inform some investment banker that there is high liquidity in our real estate sector. How funny it may seem, but it's too sarcastic. And the last picture, Delaware-sized iceberg breaks from Antarctica, wherein a colony of penguin. One of them is saying maybe climate deniers will notice when these are Texas-sized. So while we are dealing with the current pandemic that's seen to us by closing the borders and achieving isolation, in quarantine, and taking lots of sanitation, healthy steps towards it. But we never to remember that nature knows no borders. And Antarctica's problem is growing at a pace you cannot even think of. So let us begin with it. Heading to the Antarctica now. So quickly. So Antarctica, in the midst of our busy daily lives, how distant it sounds. But this distance is actually only an illusion, and one we must confront now. Thinking about Antarctica today is no indulgence, it is crucial actually. We are aware of how suddenly the corona pandemic has come upon us, out of nowhere, wherein the whole world is struggling with it. So while governments and citizens the world over heroically battling it, among other measures, closing the borders and achieving isolation, to seem to help it. In contrast, though, little will help when the impacts of the climate change taking place in the Antarctic today start to spread. And the signs are clear. Scientists find atmospheric and ocean temperatures in the Antarctic at record highs. As carbon emissions the world over rise, such heating intensifies and causing the melting of the Antarctic's ice. And that had happened to a bigger extent between 1992 and 2017. The rate of ice loss from the Antarctic Peninsula has reportedly quintupled. The possible dangers are extreme even. As Antarctica melts, the ocean levels will gradually rise. Some studies positing by even 10 feet. Such changes will cause more extreme weather events. While rising oceans could flood multiple coastal areas, losing valuable resources like land, crops, and infrastructure, the disruptions to life will be at an unimaginable scale. And this is why the Earth is giving us multiple and repeated warning signs. So, what's the need of the hour? Temperature rises, warming oceans, vanishing species, destroyed habitats, and the spread of superstorms and wildfires are all crucial signals from our planet. We need to hear the Earth speaking to us and to respect what it is saying. Because there are ways we can all help to preserve our planet. We need to adopt far more sustainable and less wasteful lifestyles. We need to cherish and protect our fellow species much more. We need to grow more trees, conserve more water, and adopt more renewable power. We need to look after nature so nature can look after us. We should hear what Earth is speaking to us and what we are going to leave for the posterity then. And Antarctica is therefore a huge warning bell which we must heed now. For even our pandemic can be controlled by closing borders. But when it comes to nature, as I already have said in the beginning, nature knows no borders. And we all must remember that. Now let's discuss few urgent alerts about Antarctica. Antarctica, as we all know, is the coldest and the driest continent on Earth. The Antarctic's ice sheet, which is about 3 miles thick, it contains 90% of the world's fresh water. It has lost the same amount of sea ice between 2014 to 2017 as the Arctic lost in the last 30 years. So you see how crucial the condition is. On February 6, 2020, the hottest temperature on record was noted in Antarctica. And Los Angeles at the same time recorded a similar temperature. That was 18.3 degrees Celsius. In fact, the record high could be linked with a foehn. Foehn means a warming of air that is coming down a slope. So the warmer winds and warm ocean waters are causing significant ice melt across the Antarctic. And the scientists they estimate the summer sea ice could even disappear within 20 to 25 years. Antarctica is now losing 6 times more ice. I repeat, 6 times more ice than it was in the 1980s. And the ice melting could raise global sea levels by over 10 feet. Now let us discuss few cases. We'll talk about Thwaites first. This also pronounced as Thwaites. The world's most unstable glacier that is retreating, and its impact is unraveling. So we'll discuss about Thwaites, and there are a few important points that we'll begin with. The Thwaites Glacier, it's a part of the West Antarctic ice sheet. This massive glacier is located by the Pine Island Bay, the part of the Amundsen Sea. Thwaites is about the size of UK. Its terminus almost 120 km wide. Its bed reaches to over 1,000 meters below sea level. The Thwaites and its neighboring Pine Island Glacier together hold about 3% of the grounded ice sheet area. It has lost about 600 billion tons of ice over several decades. And scientists they estimate the rate of ice loss has accelerated to about 50 billion tons per annum in the recent years. So you see why the 30s glacier, they are so crucial. The surveys, they find that the quantum of ice flowing away from the glacier has doubled in just 3 decades. Alongside studies find global sea levels have increased since the mid 1990s. And the experts, they say that Thwaites Glacier is now causing about 4% of global sea level rise as its ice slips into the sea. Further, researchers have now found warm waters, and that's one point is too harmful, it's too crucial to know, so vital to know. That's over 2 degrees Celsius above freezing point at the base of the glacier. The warm waters are found. As these warm waters melted, Thwaites could enter an irreversible retreat. This could destabilize the entire West Antarctic ice sheet and cause the sea levels to rise even by 12 feet. So, that is what the latest research they shows. Now, what explains the presence of warm water there? So, on our planet, everything is connected to everything else. In a sense that we have a very small planet. The winds are changing currently. This is partly natural that we need to understand, but there is also the signature of human influence on the changing winds. How you have been studying the impacts of pollution over the years, and now the wind they affect the oceans, and the oceans affect the glacier. If the winds are perturbed, they actually move ocean currents. So they can move a warm ocean current to somewhere it hasn't been before. Some of that is moving towards Antarctica and causing the change. So that is what explains the presence of warm water there. Now, why are the winds changing? Partly the winds change naturally, like the monsoons, for instance. But here there's another trend that is from greenhouse gases. These are impacting the winds near Antarctica, which are called westerlies. These are becoming stronger and moving more towards the south, which is quite a change. The Antarctica Peninsula is being greatly impacted by the winds, the warm air from the north that is moving towards it and causing this irregular change. Now, the more ice would melt, so it would add to the warming. The more the planet becomes blue in this way after melting of ice turning into water, the more heat is being absorbed. That is called the feedback effect, where the more you become warm, the warmer you become. That explains what's been happening in the Arctic over the last few years. Now we are beginning to see the Antarctic's respond towards it. Now, why is Thwaites Glacier so significant? Well, India, the US, and also the different countries, they have cameras in space to look at the planet and track the changes. The largest change that we have seen now is at the Thwaites Glacier. It is retreating and it's also becoming lower and lower every year. So we need to drill into it. And what we find? We find the warm waters beneath. That is driving this entire change. The most unstable glacier system in the world, about the size of the UK, is Thwaites. This is because it's a marine glacier. It is already in the ocean. Unlike a land-based glacier, this is so large, so very large, it is in fact sitting on the sea floor. So Thwaites is touched by the ocean. And the more you warm the ocean, the more Thwaites retreats. The marine ice sheet instability has to do with this. The most unstable glacier on Earth has the warmest water sitting in front of it. And this is not a fortunate combination at all. And Why should this worry those living far away from Antarctica? Well, this is a question of interest. Just consider the rise in ocean levels due to ice sheet instability. If you live in, say, New York or Florida or Bangladesh or India, it is increasingly likely that these places could go underwater if steps are not taken. It could be decades to centuries, but the timeline is unraveling now. This is an extreme event, but unlike, for say, hurricanes, where we have experience of what happens, this is one only event. It will be like having a typhoon, but one we have never ever seen before. So while we compare the melting of ice at Antarctica with over that to Arctic, so wherein it happened on a span of 30 years, it has happened in Antarctica in a span of 3 years. 10 times faster, a multiple of 10 times faster, in fact. So, you see how crucial that is. We'll go to case study 2, the impact on penguin colonies. The Antarctic's second largest colony of emperor or penguins collapsed in 2016, with more than 10,000 chicks lost, and the population has not recovered yet. Many of the adults relocated nearby, but the fact that emperor penguins are vulnerable in what had been considered the safest part of their range raises serious long-term concerns. Now there had been many research about it, and that led me to say one thing very important over here, that the place of the penguin colonies, they are not safe as they were before because of the climatic changes. The emperor penguins, the world's largest, breed and molt on sea ice, chunks of frozen sea water. So awkward on land, they cannot climb icy cliffs, and so they are vulnerable to warming weather and high winds whipping across the ice. Under the influence of the strongest El Nino in 60 years, September 2015 was a particularly stormy month in Heli Bay, with heavy winds and recorded low sea ice. The penguins generally stayed there from April until December, when their chicks had grown their feathers. But the storm occurred before the chicks were old enough. Those conditions appear to have led to the loss of about 14,500 to 25,000 eggs or chicks that first year. The colony has not rebounded. In fact, the British researchers, they have been studying penguins in the area since 1956, and they too had never seen a decline of this magnitude. Other scientists, they also have their projects, and they have found out the drastic declines in emperor penguin populations by the end of century because of climate change. In fact, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts, they had predicted a 30% worldwide drop in coming decades. So, the years coming ahead, they are even going to have more pathetic conditions for these. So in general, the ice obligate species, which are animals that require ice to survive, are not going to do well with the climate change. For example, the emperor penguins, they need sea ice that is fastened to the Antarctic coastline as a platform to breed, raise their chicks, and safe zones from predators like leopard seals and killer whales. As ocean and air temperatures continue to rise, excuse me, the extended duration of the ice around the continent is likely to decrease, which means that emperor penguins are likely to decrease in number as well. There are other cause and effect networks. Overfishing. So the overfishing is impacting the Southern Ocean. They fish for krill, which is the keystone species for the ecosystem, and also fish for Antarctic toothfish, which is often sold as Chilean sea bass. And the latter is an important part of the diet for Weddell seals and the type sea killer whales. The additive effects of loss of habitat here in sea ice due to the climate change and loss of food resources due to overfishing is not yet known, but they are actually worrying. In fact, what happens in the Antarctic should concern everyone. Our polar regions are effectively Earth's refrigerators. They modulate the climate around the world and they keep it relatively stable. By disrupting Earth's cooling system, we are likely to see further catastrophic weather events like hurricanes, storms, wildfires, droughts, flooding, and furthermore, the oceans take up a substantial proportion of carbon dioxide. But there's a limit to that ability, and then the oceans start to become slightly acidic. When that happens, the calciferous or made of calcium organisms that make up our primary production in the oceans become less likely to survive and provide resources for the rest of the food chain. So it is all interrelated. So there are multiple ways, therefore, that climatic change is negatively affecting not only the polar regions and the oceans, but actually the entire world. These are the catastrophic events that we have discussed about in case study 2. We'll move ahead. So what are the questions to discuss overall? So we have already discussed a lot about when I explained the chapter to you. There are a few questions. So what's the present situation with Antarctic's ecosystem? The present situation is quite terrifying. Rapid warming is bringing about changes in this ecosystem. And here you see it particularly distinctly because as the water warms, everything moves southwards to find colder waters. So penguin colonies, like the Adelies in East Antarctica, they are having to find new breeding grounds, but there is only so far south you can go. One of the most important elements of the Southern Ocean ecosystem is one you can barely see is krill, tiny ocean crustaceans that form the basis of the entire marine food chain. Small fish, penguins and whales depend on it. But krill is also a favorite catch of industrial fishing, and this is why it is so crucially important to declare marine protected areas, that is MPAs, to keep out industrial fishing and allow the krill and everything that relies on it to flourish. Why the current situation is terrifying? So, about half a way through, that is heard an almighty explosion above, it is all the ice shifting. So, there are cracks that can open up without warning, sucking everyone down hundreds of meters to the bedrock below. So, how the ice is melting and how the coastal areas, even the countries we talked about, Los Angeles, New York, India, Bangladesh, you name any, they can be drawn in water in the few years to come. Now, what are the recommendations to help Antarctica? Well, it's always better to take care of Mother Earth, to care of the nature, and take the least possible. That's what is required. So, it's very crucial, in fact, right now that the governments, the NGOs, the people, they should help to model around and do something essential, something at a faster pace, what is happening in the world and mitigate against the coming risks. But one can start at the place where one is. For instance, the plastic pollution is a huge issue. So much plastic ends up in the sea. And in fact, the ordinary people, they use plastic. And that's how they can make the most difference. Think of, for example, Afroz Shah, for instance, who rolled up his sleeves and led the largest beach cleanup in history in Mumbai. And he has inspired many, many people to join him. It seems to be a small step, but the small steps, when they are put together, they can make a huge difference. The same assignment followed by why Antarctica is the place to go to study past, present, and future of this planet. I hope this presentation would help you out a better way. If you have any comments, any queries, questions, you can post in the comment tab. Send your assignment well in order, well in time. Email it to me. Write your name at the top of the sheet along with your folio number. I wish you happy learning. Take a very good care of yourself. Thank you so much.